connecting you to the people that shape the communities and neighborhoods of Kansas City. This is Time Warner Cable Newsmakers.
The state of Kansas held its first special session since 2005, and here to tell us a little bit about, give us some insider information on what happened and why, is Kansas Attorney General General Schmidt. I'm Jill Jensen, and we are coming to you from the Royals Hall of Fame. I guess this was worth coming over the state line to see.
Absolutely. Every once in a while, we like to see how the other half lives. So
all right.
Good to be here.
Yeah, it is really good to have you here with us as well. Tell us from your perspective, why was that special session called and what happened? What led up to it on June 17th?
Right. I know this is a little bit inside baseball, if you will, for a lot of folks, but at the end of the day, this was a really important issue, and it's one of those problems avoided circumstances. But for the governor's and the legislature's willingness to come back into session in an unusual September meeting to fix a problem that had arisen over the summer, we would be talking in the coming months about some real problems in our criminal justice system. In June, the U.S. Supreme Court entered a ruling that we are confident had a direct impact on a Kansas sentencing provision. They call it the Hard 50 provision. And here's the bottom line. Kansas law has said for a long time that for people who commit first-degree premeditated murder, that the default penalty is 25 to life in prison. For certain aggravated cases, it's 50 to life in prison. And the Supreme Court ruling disabled that aggravated option in Kansas. So the net effect was some of the worst folks, in terms of having been convicted of particularly egregious homicides, would have faced a parole board in half the time, and that just wasn't acceptable.
Some of those I remember reading in some of the articles, and you can probably name them off, but some of those people that stood to maybe be let out early are some high-profile names. They were big cases.
Yeah, very true. There are cases in the Kansas City Metro that were Hard 50 cases, several out of Wichita. Our office has a number that we've prosecuted around the state in smaller jurisdictions. It's a significant number. We think somewhere in the range of 40 to 45 cases that are currently pending, not counting those that in the past have already been convicted and exhausted all their appeals, currently pending in some form or another that were affected by this ruling. And they are some very high-profile cases.
Right. I know that, I think it's important, you called it inside baseball, but I really think it is sort of important to give viewers, and especially the folks on the Kansas side, a little bit of an understanding, because I think there was some criticism, well, did the legislature not get their work done? But that's not what happened at all.
No, it's not. What happened, and go with me on the timeline here for a moment, the legislature was preparing to adjourn its annual session on June 20th of this year. They were scheduled for that. It was done. It was teed up. It was going to finish. 3 days before that, on June 17th, the U.S. Supreme Court entered this order, and 4 days after that, on June 24th, when the legislature was already gone for the year, the court entered an additional order that made clear Kansas had a problem. So there was no way the legislature could have repaired this problem because it didn't exist during the regular session, and we didn't want to wait until January, because the longer we waited, the more of these cases potentially would slip through the cracks. So I think it was the right thing to do to come back and fix it. And the legislature did it in record time, 2 days, tied for the shortest session ever in the history of the state. They got in, did their work, and left.
That's right. So you got to feel good about that.
You bet, absolutely.
What else are you feeling good about?
Oh, there's a lot going on in the state now. We had a record year this last year in our office on consumer protection recovery, scams and ripoffs and con artists and that sort of thing. We brought back about $49 million for Kansans. We feel very good about that. At the end of the day, when you can stand up for somebody who got ripped off in a telemarketing scam or whatever and get them their money back, very, very good stuff. We had a record recovery last year on Medicaid fraud, money back for the taxpayers. We got some good stuff going on at the Kansas AG's office. Yeah,
and I also want to say, as a Kansan, I'm glad to see what you're doing with the roofers.
Thank you very much. Yes, very much. The problem there is not the good actors and the good businesses. The problem there are these storm chasers who sort of roam the prairies, I've come to say, like a herd of buffalo, and follow the hailstorms and the windstorms and really get into people's pocketbooks.
Yeah, makes me feel good, though, when they're registered with your office.
We're working on it.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks so much.
All right. That's all the time we have.